Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Isaiah, the 24th chapter. And as you can see here, judgment on the earth. And in this chapter, Isaiah 24, this is pretty much a prophetic chapter that or vision that Isaiah saw concerning the judgment that would come upon the world in these last days, and primarily upon Babylon, right? Other parts as well, but upon Babylon and Esau and so on. And now there are certain parts in here that, applied to Israel, but similar to, I believe it's Amos, the 9th chapter, about the sinful kingdom. You had that the manifold layers of the scriptures, all right, where there are certain events that did apply historically to Israel, all right, but you can see the reusable application of that now, right, meaning that that statement can still hold true for a different time period or different people. So anyway, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 24, verse 1. Behold, the Lord Yahweh maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. Now, you can imagine the visual of this, right? As if you actually grab like a container or something, right? You just like shook it and then turned it around and like cleared out everything in it. That's sort of like the imagery here. Now, to make the earth empty, when you look at the word earth, I believe it should be aratizah, right? So aratizah in the Hebrew is oftentimes translated into English as the word earth, but also means land. Okay, so it depends on the context whether the word aratizah, which you might see in English as earth, is referring to the oikomene sense in the Greek, which is the whole earth, right, as opposed to a part, right, which would be like a land, country, territory, district, region, etc., etc., and then also like the ground. So when you go to Isaiah 24, the Lord is not going to make the entire planet empty, but it's going to be certain parts, namely Babylon the Great, which is America. That's going to be one of the lands or regions of the earth that's going to be made empty by way of the result of World War III, right? Which you can see America is going to play a major role in that as well, or Babylon. So as it says, and there's other parts as well, right? The land of Israel, which is the scriptures has been prophesied to also be hit with nuclear missiles in that war. It says here, and maketh it waste, right? Once again, the land, not the entire planet, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. So you're going to have, and this is going to be by way mainly of the impact, right? You have the shock, the impact, the destruction that these missiles are going to leave when they hit certain parts of the world, right? Both shaking the earth and destroying places and people. Okay? And that goes into the scattering abroad of the inhabitants thereof, right? Because you're going to have so much destruction. You're going to have people fleeing, but you're also going to have people in different areas getting destroyed. Verse 2, and it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the treasurer or the taker of usury, so with the giver of usury to him. So what does this mean? This means that it's this judgment that's coming, and the way it's going to affect people, it's going to be role or status agnostic. The word agnostic meaning like regardless of your status or regardless of your role, everybody's going to be subject to the same kind of judgment, right? So whether you're a priest or a regular civilian person, you're a servant or a master or a maid or a mistress, when this destruction comes, everybody's still going to be in it. Okay? And your status or position in this world is not going to exempt you from it, save you are of the Lord's elect. Verse 3, the land shall be utterly emptied, and utterly spoiled. See, now I believe the word land here should also be, yeah, there you go, Aratiza. So in that verse, see, they translated it as land. So sometimes, they'll translate it as earth. Sometimes they'll translate it as, or it'll be translated as land. But the same Hebrew word there, Aratiza, is used for them both. So it shall be utterly emptied. How is that going to work? Well, when you deal with these nuclear missiles, right, these intercontinental ballistic missiles, a lot of them are carrying a numerous amount of warheads that travel from one region or one part of the earth to another, and then they unleash those warheads, causing that fiery destruction upon that land. So you may have a region of land that may have people, houses, cars. Those things are filling up the land. But with the level of destruction that these weapons are going to cause, they're going to level everything, right? It tells you that in the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, the elements shall melt. That includes people, cars, buildings. So that's going to be the intensity of this fire. That's why they always, whenever talks of nuclear war comes up, people you refer to the term MAD, which is mutually assured destruction, because it can lead to a very, devastating aftermath. So if you have a land that is filled with like cities and people and so on, after those multiple warheads and multiple missiles carrying them hit that land and pretty much pummel it with fire, it's going to be nothing left, right? It's going to melt everything. And when the smoke eventually clears, after however long that takes, it's just going to be pretty much desert, sand. So that's the visual, and that's why Isaiah is mentioning here the land being utterly emptied, seeing both the impact and the aftermath, and utterly spoiled, right? Also destroyed. For the Lord Yahweh hath spoken this word. Now, let's actually look into this word spoiled as well. All right, bazaz. To spoil, plunder, prey upon, to spoil, plunder. So that makes sense. Because that's what's going to happen, right? These different areas are going to become likened onto a prey that is going to be targeted. For the Lord hath spoken this word. So this is determined by the Lord and is going to be fulfilled in our time. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. Yeah. And why is that? Because, and this is the inhabitants of the earth, right? And the people in different parts of the world. Why are they going to be languishing and mourning? Because of the destruction that's going to be happening. It's not going to be isolated to one part of the world. The majority, right, of the world is going to feel this. That's why it's called a world war. And people are going to be afraid and they're going to mourn. And let's look into this word fadeth away. All right, Nabal. Okay, so you have here to be foolish, treat with contempt, but I don't think that's the usage we're looking for here. To sink, drop down, languish, wither, and fall. All right, and so you're gonna have that in the sense of different states, right? When I say states, I mean like the condition. So right now you have certain power structures, right? There's a certain status quo, right? There's certain orders, right, that are set in place right now, and all of those are going to fall and collapse along with the physical destruction to this place. Because usually governments, buildings, authorities, they're complemented with physical buildings, right? Physical things, right? Governments have buildings, right? They have countries. Countries are filled with buildings. They're filled with people. They're filled with militaries. Militaries have people. They have weapons. So when all those things go down and are destroyed physically, so does that power and that status. If you had a Russia, right, or America overnight, if all their military armaments were destroyed overnight, they would lose their status of being a world superpower. Because why do people fear them? Because of their might. They're part, or even NATO, for example. If they all lost their weapons, they just disappeared overnight, so would their power. So when this destruction happens, it's gonna bring down both in the physical sense and also in the sense of, the different power structures that are set up. Verse 5, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, right? So the inhabitants thereof are those that are obviously inhabiting the earth. But why? Because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance. So this is from the head down to the tail. The inhabitants, yes, the main culprits really are, going back to Job 9:24, the elites of Esau Edom. They're guilty of changing the ordinance. They're guilty of transgressing the laws. But guess who's also guilty of transgressing the laws? The people that are under them. And due to the combination of wicked rulers setting wicked laws and people following suit, the earth itself has become defiled. They don't keep the land Sabbath, right? They pollute, right, nature. They destroy to create and turn everything artificial at the means of destroying nature. And not only just the physical sense of the earth, but also the ordinances, like the way of living, the proper way of life is also defiled. It says here, broken the everlasting covenant, right? Which when you go into it, ultimately, who did the Lord make a covenant with? Israel. But they're also guilty, right, of breaking that covenant. So the earth is now in this state, or in this condition that it's in, as a result of people that are, transgressing the laws of the Heavenly Father, but that being orchestrated and led by these wicked secret rulers, primarily Esau Edom. Verse 6, therefore, and don't get it twisted, it's not just them, right? You also have heathen elites that are, I mean, they're heathens too, right? But you also have elites of these other nations that are contributing to that. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth. And the curse here is referring to the result, right? Because remember, when you go into the law, the Lord had, especially in Deuteronomy 20, 28, 25. I haven't gone there in such a while. Let me just make sure. Deuteronomy 20. I think it's 28, yeah. Yep. So if you go into Deuteronomy 28, right, it lists out the blessings that would happen if we follow the ways of the Lord, and the curses that would come upon us, right? And it's worded as like the curses because they're a punishment or a result of iniquity. So this this curse that's going to devour the earth is going to be a punishment as a result of the iniquity, the transgression of the laws, the changing of ordinances, the ungodly behavior that is being pushed forth by Esau Edom. So as a result, the curse hath devoured the earth, which is what Isaiah saw, and he's going to describe in detail how so. And they that dwell therein are desolate, therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned. Why? Because they're the same ones who are transgressing the laws, changing the ordinances, and breaking the covenant. Right? So the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and that's a key part right there. The way this curse is devouring the earth is by fire. And if the inhabitants are getting burned, so will their buildings, their cities, their, places of occupation, and few men left, which is going to be like a fraction or a remnant of the original population. And this is going to be the result of that Third World War. That Third World War is going to be fought with nuclear weapons. Those nuclear weapons are likened unto a curse that's devouring the earth because of how deadly and destructive they are. And because of that destruction, you're going to have a good portion of people on the earth die by way of getting burnt. And you're going to have a few that are left, and in that few are going to be the elect. But you're also going to have other nations that are scattered in different parts of the world that are going to survive this destruction that's coming. Verse 7, the new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, all the merry-hearted do sigh. And so now Isaiah is mentioning, like, he's seen this destruction, and he's saying, like, yo, it's basically, it's a time of, not a time of jokes, not a time of laughter, but all joy is basically going to be turned opposite. Now the new wine is as it says, right? Usually it's that new wine which would happen when the harvest season will come around, and they would gather the grapes into the wine vat or the wine press, and they would step on it. They would trot it down to squeeze and get the blood of the grapes where you would make your wine from. So the process of that is typically a joyous thing, right? It's typically a time of like joy, singing, and so on and so forth. But in this case, you're gonna have all of that ceasing. That joy is gonna cease. The wine is gonna cease. Okay, and as it says, the vine languisheth, and all the merry-hearted do sigh. When you go into that word sigh, it goes more into like not like a sigh of relief, but quite the opposite. It goes into here to sigh, groan in pain or grief. Okay, so that's what's going to be happening as a result of that destruction. The mirth, so basically, in a nutshell, people are going to be in a somber, sorrowful mood, not in a joyous, folly, exulting state of mind. The mirth of tabrets ceaseth, the noise of them that rejoice endeth. See? When people are rejoicing, they're singing, they're dancing, they're having fun, they're loud. That noise is going to end, right? And it's going to end because they're going to be afraid. Nobody's going to be in that mood. No more music, no more, none of that. The joy of the harp ceaseth. They shall not drink wine with a song. And so these are all like activities and things that are done typically in society when everything is normal, right? You go out, you have fun, you party, you get together, and usually what do you have there? If you have drinks, you have music. You have music, you have drinks. You have people, you have, joy, jokes, all of that kind of stuff. All right, typically that's the setting. But with this destruction coming and the mood that it's going to set, all of these things are going to stop, basically. So Isaiah's saying, like, you ain't going to be seeing this as like a common thing that you would see before. So as it says, they shall not drink wine with a song. All that is going to cease, and strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. Now, it doesn't mean that in that time, if you go and drink wine, it's going to taste like I don't know, like wormwood or something. That's not what it means. But what it means is usually wine or drinks or whatever, it tastes better when you're in a good mood, when the setting is right. But when you're going through, when people eat what they call it, stress eating or something like that, where a girl goes through a heartbreak and she buys a tub of ice cream and she's just eating it while crying. The eating of the ice cream is not really in a sense of I'm happy and it's lit, I'm just trying to chill, it's a Friday night and just relax and chill. It's more so as I'm trying to do this to help soothe the pain that I'm going through. Comfort foods, they call it. So similarly with strong drink or like, drinks in general, when depending on the mood that you're drinking it in, it might not, it doesn't give the same feeling, right? It's some people, they just drink to drown out their sorrows, and that's not a good feeling, because if it is, then they wouldn't be crying, right? So people, you have the scene, right? The dude has a bottle in his hands. I don't know, something just happened, and he's all messed up, strung out, heartbroken, and he's crying. And every time he remembers and his pain gets worse, then he'll drink some more. That's bitter. Okay, that's not a sweet feeling or sweet taste. Verse 10. The city of confusion is broken down. And what is the city of confusion? The city of confusion is Babylon, America today. Okay, and the word Babylon, when you break it down, going back to the root word Babal, means confusion. But why is it broken down? Well, let's start with why is it the city of confusion? When you, especially today, you can look around and you may be looking at someone who appears to be one person, but is actually the other, right? You may be looking at one gender thinking it's the other. Let's put it like that, okay? And then it's to the point where you may not be able to even tell the difference. You may look at a woman that looks so young and beautiful, and then come to find out it's all just makeup, which is deception. She takes it off and she looks like an old, hideous hag. And you're like, whoa, right? A good proportion of the products and way of life in in America or in Babylon is built on confusion. Okay, even just what keeps this place going is deception, and deception confuses people, and through that confused state they continue to live. When you go on social media and they invent all these filters, these face filters deceive, because it's not what you actually look like. It makes you look different, and whoever's looking at it gets confused because they think that that's actually you, and then when they actually see the real you, they're like, why don't you look the same as in your pictures? They're confused because majority of this society is built upon confusion all around. Okay, they will say one thing, they'll swear on the Bible, and then they'll do everything contrary to it. That is confusion, because now you're wondering, wait, hold on, didn't you just, isn't it in God we trust, but you're doing everything that God hates? you know how is the Pope, who's supposed to be a representative of TG, or in support of that? It's confusion. It's confusion everywhere. You see a woman, she looks fine, come to find out her whole body is fake. Her lips are fake, her breasts are fake, her ass is fake. It's confusion. Okay, and it can go on and on and on. You eat a certain food thinking it's one thing, and you come to find out it's not. It's another thing. It's confusion. You can literally do a video on just why this place is called the City of Confusion, and you would have on and on and on and on and on. Okay, so as it says, it's broken down, right? The Lord is finally, at least as Isaiah is seeing, bringing the judgment upon this place and collapsing it along with its confusion. Because the scriptures say the Most High is not the author of confusion. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. So in Isaiah 24, the setting is you're gonna have nuclear destruction, and keep this in mind. When you read some of these prophetic chapters, they're not always in chronological order. Okay? And it could very well be that it's either, the prophets didn't write it down in chronological order all the time, or they weren't shown these things always in chronological order. Okay, so sometimes you'll be reading, in the first few verses we'll talk about the post destruction or the aftermath or the actual destruction, but then the next few verses talk about what happens, amidst the chaos, what happens in Jacob's trouble, and then it jumps back. So it's you need to understand that on a holistic level, it's all talking about prophecy, but it's not always going to be chronological, as in this happens, then this, then this, then this, then this, exactly in that order. So as it says, every house is shut up that no man may come in. Yeah, and you'd see that, right? Because you'd have, basically in that time, there's going to be a lot of chaos and destruction going on, both on a geopolitical level, as stability decreases between different nations leading up to that war, and also internally in different countries, in different nations, primarily Babylon. And people are going to be afraid to where they're going to be, like you saw that, right? Whenever they have these wild protests or riots, you have these stores that are boarded up. They basically seal up and lock their doors so nobody can come in. Because when things get dangerous, people go inside and then they hide. Verse 11, there is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. Okay, and what does that wine signify? On a spiritual level, right, it signifies like this truth, because the truth is also likened onto wine. But when people are seeking that, it's to basically, like I gave the example above, to give them some sort of comfort, right? Some sort of to ease my pain kind of thing. Okay, and ultimately this is going to look like them seeking information, because they're going to be stressed. So they're going to be, because think about it, right? On a literal level, if destruction hits, right? If there's a major incident that takes place, right? Or you look at like 9/11, right? People are people are walking around, and then boom, boom, all of a sudden this happens and that happens. People are not running in the streets saying, where the liquor store at? Yo, let me get some, and they start naming different drinks. Different wine. Yo, where's the wine? Where's the wine? Where's the Manischewitz? I know somebody's gonna have a problem with that, you know. So yo, where's this? Where's that? I know, right? Of all different ones, I list that. Anyway, that's what came to mind. So people are not running around in the streets when all hell is breaking loose, asking for actual wine. They're looking for, yo, what's going on? Wait, what do we do? Where are we going? Where do we go? That's what they're seeking. That information, those answers, right? But also comfort, because not knowing scares people and it makes them uncomfortable. You ever started a sentence and told somebody, yo, I gotta tell you something, but like, don't get mad. And then you look at them once you have their attention and you're like, nah, you know what? It's fine. Never mind. It's all good. If you want to ruin somebody's day, you do that. And it's either going to end in them being pissed off or them being pissed off. Because then they're going to be like, why did you even get me? Because now they want to know. Right? Or somebody, you get that text of like, from your significant other, as they, they word it today, and they're like, can we talk? Or we need to talk randomly. Now and you can't because maybe you're working. So now you got to, or maybe they're working, and now you got to wait till till after work or whatnot. Now your whole mind is like, what is it? What is it? What is it? Like, I would rather you just tell me right now. I don't know what it is, and it's bothering me. Okay, so that information brings comfort because people are uncomfortable not knowing things. All right, and so they're going to be seeking that ultimately in the form of that comfort, right? So as it says, all joy is darkened, the mirth of the land is gone. And mirth is just joy, laughter. All of that is going to be gone. Go and watch the Book of Eli. Go and watch I Am Legend. Go and watch The Walking Dead. You see how very rarely they actually like smile or laugh, because most of their day, most of the time is like they're scared, right? Or they're stressed, or they're afraid, or they're hungry, and they're just not in a good state of mind. Verse 12: the city, in the city is left desolation, and the gate is smitten with destruction. Right. Once again, echoing the sentiments from above. Right. And this is going to be, you're going to have, before the ultimate thermonuclear destruction hits, you're going to have certain areas in this place that look very bad. Right. Like the aftermath of a civil unrest storm. Verse 13: when thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, there shall be the shaking of there. So when this comes to pass, it's going to be like the shaking of an olive tree, and as the gleaning grapes when the vintage is done. Okay, so meaning when it comes, like when you shake an olive tree, right? On the one sense, you have that image of like the olives falling off of the tree, I think it says in that Revelation 6 as well. It's like when the missiles hit, it's going to look like a fig tree that is blown of a mighty wind. So you just have the figs just dropping, like it's raining down, which that's the visual that's going to happen when those missiles hit. But when you look at the latter part of this, about the shaking of an olive tree, when you shake an olive tree, not all the olives fall off. There's always one or two, or a little cluster that is left. Same here. When you glean the grapes, right, and when the vintage is done, you don't take everything off. There's still one or two or a couple that are left on there. Okay, and that is to signify how, when this destruction comes, there's going to be a great majority taken and destroyed, but there's going to be a few remnants that are left, like the results of shaking of an olive tree or the gleaning of the vintage. And I think it says that in 2nd Ezra 16 as well, right? Let me see if I can find that, because not everybody's going to ultimately be destroyed, which we know according to prophecy. There we go. 2nd Ezra chapter 16, verse 27. So that one man shall desire to see another, and to hear his voice. For of a city there shall be 10 left, and 2 of the field, which shall hide themselves in the thick groves and in the clefts of the rocks. As in an orchard of olives, upon every tree there are 3 or 4 olives, right? Meaning what's left. Or as when a vineyard is gathered, there are left some clusters of them that diligently seek through the vineyard. See, even so in those days shall there be 3 or 4 left by them that search their houses with the sword. So when that chaos is going on, it's going to be very like there are going to be few people left basically, and they're going to be little hiding, right? Little remnants like that of the visual we just read here. Verse 14, they shall lift up their voice, they shall sing for the majesty of the Lord. And this is why prophecy can be confusing to some if you don't have the Spirit, because you're wondering usually when people read any book, typically unless they're given like a heads up that, hey, this book is written a certain kind of way, so you have to read it a certain kind of way, they expect that what they're reading above, as they're going down, everything new that they read should connect to what they've already read. There has to be some connection there, and usually they expect it to be direct. So when people are reading these verses here, they're like, okay, they shall lift up their voice, they shall sing for the majesty of the Lord. But if the Lord is bringing destruction and there's only a few of them left and they're afraid, why are they going to be singing for the majesty of the Lord, right? So that's why it's important to understand the bigger picture of, well, what's the ultimate script that the Lord has written. We know that there's going to be destruction. We know that in the destruction, not everybody's going to get God. There are going to be remnants of people that are going to still be alive, and more importantly, they're going to be a remnant of the elect, or the elect are the remnant, I should say, that will be delivered. They are the ones here that are going to lift up their voice and sing for the majesty of the Lord Yahweh, because they're going to be delivered from this destruction, right? Like that cluster that is left, that is not touched on that tree. As it says, they shall cry aloud from the sea. Now, it doesn't mean, how is this going to play out, right? Is there any other part in prophecy where it mentions those that are delivered crying from the sea? Maybe they're either stranded on a boat somewhere, or they're underwater and they're crying out, rejoicing in the Lord. No. So obviously the sea here doesn't mean the literal actual sea. Now, when you read in Revelation 15, right, it mentions I think it's 15:2. It goes into the deliverance of those that were able to overcome through Yahushua, which are the elect, and how when they are delivered in the chariots in the firmament, okay, they are going to rejoice, okay, and I think it says they sing the song of Moses. So those crying aloud from the sea is really them, the elect that are praising the Lord from the chariots, when that destruction comes and they get delivered. Because the sea, I believe, is yam in the Hebrew, and you have, which means like waters, but you also have the firmament, which is shamayim, right, pertaining to the waters. And why is that? Because the scriptures tell you that the firmament divided the waters that were above from below. Now, when you also look this up in some of these other translations, they have this word as west. Okay. Right. So NIV, from the west, they acclaim the Lord's majesty. Over the majesty of the Lord, they shout from the west, from the west, from the west. And when you look up the word sea here, it's still the word yum. I believe it's yum or mayum, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so you have here yum. Is this a singular? Does it tell us? Okay. So you see here, they have certain uses of this as west, right? So if you look here, you have one of the first things: Mediterranean Sea, Red Sea, Dead Sea, Sea of Galilee, Mighty River, seaward, westward, or west. And when you look this up, basically the reason why it's also attributed to the west is because when you look at the geography of the land of Israel, let's see, land of Israel, Bible map. All right, I think this might do it. Yeah, this is fine. So if we look at images, so if you look at the land of Israel, on the west of Israel is the Mediterranean Sea. And it was basically known as the sea, like the main body of water that was around. And it was on the left, on the west of them. And typically back then, they would attribute or identify like locations with major like landmarks, for example. Okay, and so I believe when you go into the word south, it's also Negev, which is like a desert that is south. Okay, so when back then, right, if they were to say like the sea, they're referring westward, right? Meaning you would go more if you're facing in this direction, right? You would go more towards your west. Or if they were to say to the desert, that means you would go more southward. Okay, and so they would use like some of those major like landmarks, what, right? And then they would use that as a you know, as a like a direction sign of sort of representation of direction. So today, for example, right, you may say, oh, we they drove up to New York, right? Or they went down south, right? When you say they went like down south or down towards, I don't know, Texas or Mississippi or something like that, you are using that location as like a directional landmark, right? Or West Coast, right? We say West Coast. When you say Cali, right? When you tell somebody, yo, you're in New York, you gotta go to Cali, they automatically think west, right? So when you say Cali, somebody might interchange that with the West Coast. When you say New York, they're gonna interchange that with the East Coast, right? So similarly, when they said the sea, mainly referring to the Mediterranean Sea, that is interchangeable with like westward, because that's the direction from the land of Israel here, which is also spiritual because you are going to have, I think it's in Isaiah 59. Is it 59 and 19? Let me see if it's worded how I am thinking it, right? So shall they fear the name of the Lord. That's the one, from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, right? And obviously in fearing the name of the Lord, we're going to call upon the name of the Lord as well, starting here in the west. So going back to Isaiah chapter 24, verse 14, right? So ultimately this is synonymous or right in line with like Revelation 15. Verse 15, wherefore glorify ye the Lord Yahweh in the fires, even the name of the Lord Yahweh, God of Israel, in the isles of the sea. And the isles of the sea are the isles means like the islands, right? But why does it say here, glorify him in the fires? Because it is through the fire, right? Like it says in Zechariah, the third part is going to be brought through the fire. So the Lord is going to deliver that portion. It's the same people that are rejoicing in the Lord that Isaiah is saying here, glorify the Lord in the fires. Basically, that's that time of us being delivered, and glorify him because, you know, he is not only is he bringing this destruction, but he is also delivering his elect, right? And basically making true on his word or his promise, because this would be the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven. All right. So as it says here, verse 16, from the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs, even glory to the righteous. And that's going to be wherever the elect are, because they're the ones who are going to be pretty much rejoicing and praising Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, and glorifying in the work that he is doing, right? Which is attributed to like the glory, as it says, glory to the righteous. But I said, my leanness, woe unto me. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously. Yea, the treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. So once again, Isaiah is seeing all of these things, right? But pretty much he's at this point, he's making like an interjection to say like, yes, destruction comes, deliverance comes along with it. You know, those that are delivered rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. But basically, don't forget about the treachery that was done by who is the treacherous dealers. It starts with Esau Edom, right? So that's why it says here, my leanness. When you look this up in right, and we can even use the NKJV. From the ends of the earth we have heard songs, glory to the righteous. But I said, I am ruined, ruined. Woe to me. The treacherous dealers have dealt treacherously indeed. The treacherous dealers have dealt very treacherously. right? NLT, I'm just going to read that main part. But my heart is heavy with grief. Weep for me, for I wither away. Deceit still prevails and treachery is everywhere. So he's saying that because he also sees in his vision here the level of wickedness and treachery, you can call it, that Esau Edom has dealt up until this point. Okay, so this is at this part, it's almost like, let's not gloss over, right? Being caught up in the rejoicing of salvation. Let's not gloss over the wickedness that has still been dealt and the damage that has been done by these wicked and treacherous dealers. And now it goes on to focus on them a little bit here in terms of the judgment that will come, right? So as it says, fear and the pit and the snare are upon thee, O inhabitant of the earth. Okay, and that's going to be the fear, the pit, the snare. These are going to come in the form of the judgments that are going to be taking place upon the earth. Okay, it says here, and it shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit, because the pit is also a trap. And he that cometh up out of the midst of the pit shall be taken in the snare, which is another trap. For the windows from on high are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. So this is a representation of a time of judgment. When you read in Amos, I believe it's the 5th chapter, it talks about, it's basically Amos words it similarly, right? It's going to be as if a man did flee from a lion and a bear met him, or he basically escaped from the bear, leaned his hand on the wall, and a serpent bit him. So you're going to run from one trouble to another, and just when you think you've escaped that, you get caught in another one. And why is this? This is going to be because, as it says, the windows of heaven on high are open and the foundations of the earth do shake. Meaning this is going to be, and that's a visual representation of the time of judgment. Okay? Because there's going to be so much destruction happening and so many unexplainable things happening. And also it's going to involve the actual literal shaking of the earth. Verse 19, the earth is utterly broken down. Once again, going into what that land, the earth is clean dissolved. We should all know what the word dissolved means, but let's look into it. It says here, parar, which is to break, to violate, to make ineffectual, to be frustrated, to be broken to bits, to shatter, to crack. Now, that's not going to be the whole planet, because we know that it's the same earth that we're still going to have to come down and dwell upon. It's the same earth that's going to be made new again. But there's certain parts, okay, of the earth that are going to be destroyed. Certain lands that are going to be broken down and destroyed, as it says, clean dissolved. How is that? How is it going to be clean dissolved? By way of that fire, right? The earth is moved exceedingly. Yeah, because you're going to have missiles hitting it, which are going to actually shake it. And you're going to have those missiles also cause earthquakes. Okay, they're going to cause the shifting of those tectonic plates underneath the surface of the earth that have basically been lodged together, building up tension for decades. And by having that, if you look up how earthquakes happen, it's basically that you have the plates that get locked in with each other, going in opposite directions, and they're still pushing each other in opposite directions, but the force is almost like evenly matched. So when a certain impact hits the earth and it causes whatever parts of those plates that are locked together to break, that's where you have that sudden shift, right? Because imagine this, right? Imagine you are you're trying to push somebody back, and they're also trying to push you back, and you're both pushing together each other, and you're both like sort of stuck. And then something happens and one of you loses their footing, so they slip. Because of the tension that has been built of each other, of you trying to push one way, they're pushing the other way, you're both going to suddenly fall in opposite directions with force, right? Because that's the force you were pushing each other with. And in terms of earthquakes, that's what causes that rift or that tear that then causes the fractures and the splitting of what you see on the actual surface. So when these plates are locked in and you have the impact of the missiles hitting, because it's not just fire, it's an actual force. It's coming down with speed. So when it hits, boom, 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 and it's hitting different parts, you're going to have those plates shifting. And that's going to be causing more quakes, and it's going to be causing tsunamis, and it's going to be causing the earth to actually move. That's why Isaiah describes it as exceedingly. And from our visual standpoint, it'll look like buildings shaking, cars honking, their alarms going off. So it's going to be very, very, very scary. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, right? So when you see somebody that's drunk and how they're staggering, that's how Isaiah likens the shaking of the earth. And the earth is a huge place. So imagine that. And shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And the transgression thereof being heavy upon it is like, as it says in Daniel, the judgment shall sit. The reason this calamity is going to hit certain parts of the earth, right, certain lands, is going to be because of that iniquity, okay, that has been accumulated on and on and on and on and on. So that's going to be heavily sitting upon this place, and that's going to cause or warrant that judgment to come upon it. And once that judgment hits, this place, primarily Babylon, is not going to come back up again. Not even as just like a land of habitation. Verse 21, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord Yahweh shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high. So who are the hosts of the high ones that are on high? These elites, right? And these different rich families behind the scenes pulling the strings. They're the ones on high. And the kings of the earth upon the earth. And yes, these elites are kings, but you also have you also have the equivalent in these other heathen nations that are also in agreements with the Edomite elites. So they're also all going to get that punishment. But the primary target is Esau Edom, because now is his time to rule. Verse 22, and they shall be gathered together, right? The same subject matter in 21, as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and they shall be shut up in prison. When is this going to happen? This is going to happen when Yahushua comes back. The World War III and the destruction it comes with is going to be the entrance of Yahushua and the holy angels. They're going to deliver the elect, and after a period of time, the Lord and the elect are going to come back out and gather up, right? As they instill righteousness upon the earth again, they're going to gather up these high ones and these kings of the earth as prisoners, okay, for the wickedness that they've done. As it says here, and they shall be gathered in the pit. They're going to be actual pits, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. So they're going to be living the life of captives or slaves and working. The moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed. And when you deal with the sun and the moon, these are literal, right? Literal elements, right, for lack of a better word, but they're always going to still play their roles, right? So I mean, the physical actual moon and the physical sun, they haven't done anything wrong, right, to be quote unquote ashamed about. But what it refers to here is metaphorically, the moon and the sun represent wisdom and understanding, right? Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So when it says here, the moon shall be confounded and the sun ashamed, meaning like the wisdom of this world is going to be confounded. It's going to be brought down. And how is that going to happen? When they pull out all their stops and everything they thought they knew gets turned upside down and overshadowed by the truth, which is going to shine in its brightest form at the return of Yahushua. All of that is going to be confounded, okay, and subjected under the proper reign of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushua. And that's why it tells you when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion, because that's when the true knowledge and the true way of life is going to be spread throughout the whole earth, okay, in the form of justice and order that everybody has to follow. It says here, and in Jerusalem and before his ancients gloriously, okay, and those are going to be the children of Israel, starting with the elect. And this pretty much brings us to the end of the book of Isaiah, the 24th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Recha Kudash. Until next time, Shalom.